summer I learned to listen. The air tasted of peaches and rain, and the old house stood as patient as a grandmother keeps a secret pressed into her shawl. I was no more than a child then, with summer's heat clinging to my wrists, and a horizon that promised nothing but the next bright day. The house, with its silvered ceilings and windows that remembered the sea, breathed a welcome that smelled of clean linen and old prayers. It was not large, not grand, but it kept a voice for every hour, and I learned to lean my ear against the parlour door to hear the soft, almost murmurous history of the rooms. In the kitchen, the table remembered the cakes Grandma Ava used to bake, their crusts still faintly crackling in memory when the stove's flame fell asleep. We would press our palms to the unglazed ceramic of the hearth and pretend the warmth could tell us about yesterday, about the aunt who went away for a year and never came back, about the dog, Billy, who died on a sun-wet afternoon and woke again only inside the walls of this place, somewhere beyond sight. Outside, the lilacs swayed like pale moons, and the cornfields beyond the hedge undulated with the patient breathing of children long since grown, who would someday be strangers to these names and songs. There was a ritual, simple and strange, as though the house itself demanded it. We gathered at twilight, Mara and I, two girls with knees muddy from the ditch behind the yard, two minds full of daydreams and the stubborn courage that springs from a brave but dwindling faith in miracles. We laid a circle of shells we'd found on the shore, around a bottle of seawater a cousin had brought from a trip to the coast. We spoke only what the circle could hear, names for the things we feared and hoped, whispered bravely because the walls seemed to lean closer when we spoke softly enough to be believed. We did not know then that the house listened more keenly than we, that it kept every breath we gave away and tucked it into its silent, timbered heart. The attic with its ladder that groaned like an old man waking from sleep, held the first tremor of unease. A window there faced the same sea, though the town lay miles away and the water was not to be trusted to mercy or mercy's God. When Mara and I pressed our faces to the glass, we swore we saw the world tilt, as if the earth itself paused to remember us. The ring of shells grew heavier around the hearth, as if it too remembered how long summers last and how some summers never leave you. Then came the night when the house learned a louder language, a sound not born of weather or where, but of something's careful choosing to make a sound. The pipe in the kitchen sighed with a voice that was not quite whisper and not quite wind, a sound that suggested doors that should be closed but never were. The walls, we discovered, had a way of listening that ran deeper than hearing, an awareness of a room's own past mistakes and options. The night Mara vanished with the storm. It was not a storm like those you read about in penny dreadfuls, but a storm that rearranged the furniture of the mind. The sea, which always kept a memory of the land's shore, sent a spray through the house that came from nowhere and soaked the floorboards with salt that did not belong to the rivers or the rain. We went into the attic to see what lights there might be, to hear the sound of something breathing behind the wallpaper, as if the house itself needed a patient to listen to its heart. The staircase creaked, not just with age, but with waiting. In the attic, Bo found a single piece of truth folded into the mundane. A small trunk lay beneath a dusty skylight, its lid carved with a girl's name I could not quite read, the letters worn by time to a soft, intimate blur. Mara's name was there. The handwriting was hers when we were 7, a child's scrawl that had learned to spell fear with too much confidence. But beside it, pressed into the wood like a secret, was a photograph we did not recall ever having seen. A portrait of a girl who looked precisely like Mara, but with eyes older than the summer that held us. The room seemed to tilt again, the air thick with the scent of brine and a sweetness that reminded me of something I had buried long ago. The girl's face was the face I knew best in the days after, the face of Mara, grown older, in a way that felt both miraculous and hostile. The trunk's lid bore Mara's name, and something else, written in a child's hand that did not belong to our years anymore. A final scrap of a prayer, a line I did not recognize as mine, or as hers, or as the house's. The attic light flickered in a way that suggested a window you could not see, and yet always existed. The sort of light that makes you think you are looking at the past from a different angle, or perhaps the past looking at you through permission you never granted. When Mara disappeared, I blamed the sea and the storm, the way the house had tasted salt in the night air, and then exhaled a sigh that sounded like a sob. But standing over that trunk, years later, I could not pretend it was merely fate or misfortune. The shells around the hearth pressed closer together as though they too remembered Mara, and believed in their circle's magic with a faith I had long since outgrown. I touched the photograph's glass, and the image behind it, two sisters at a table, a room that might have been ours, or might have belonged to someone else, seemed to lean toward me, as if to remind me that I was not looking at a memory, but at a doorway. Time in that moment took on a different motion. The house did not grow darker. It learned to breathe with the slow, careful patience of a creature that has existed since the first dawn, and knows that every dawn will arrive again, bearing the same light, the same small disappointments, the same stubborn loves. The shells remained, but no longer felt like a circle against the floor. They felt like a vow, the kind of vow a house makes when you forget how long it has stood and how much it has learned in the long, silent apprenticeship of watching corners and doors. In the years that followed, I left the shore's hush and returned as a spectator would to his old stage. I did not always know what I remembered when I walked the floor's boards and pressed my shoulder to the doorway's frame. The house, for its part, did not forget to listen, and it did not forget Mara. The way the light settled in the stairwell, the way the sea's spray would briefly seem to appear in the kitchen's steam. The way the attic's window would reflect an image of myself and a younger self, both of us looking back, as if we stood at different ends of the same room. All of these remained. Now, in the evenings, as my breath grows slower and the world thins